promoting the free exchange of ideas, questioning the status quo, and having some fun along the way. This is the Are We Idiots Show. Now here are your hosts, Mark Weaver and Rich Kroll.
Hello again, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Are We Idiots Show. We are your hosts, as mentioned, Mark Weaver and Richard Kroll.
Howdy, Marcus. Great to see you today. You know, I won't do the weather, but I tell you.
No tip of the day either? You're going to go in another direction.
I have a tip of the day, but I love the Eric Weaver experience, but is that our official opening theme?
Now, if you don't listen carefully, you should know that we have 4 or 5 different EWE experience songs that we use.
All right, maybe I'm just getting used to the 4 or 5. Will they be releasing any new music for us?
Get on that, Eric and Grammy.
Now that I sit here, I was going to do the weather. If I look left, I can do the weather, but I'm looking right in your combo office studio, and I saw a bunch of really attractive looking Scotch and
Not
bourbon
women.
glasses.
Not women.
Not women.
We don't have women in here.
No, we don't do that.
Okay.
And then I look a bit above it, and I see an array of scotches. And one of my favorites of all time, the Glenmorangie Quinta Reuben. One of my favorites.
I believe it's Glenmorangie is the way you pronounce it.
Glenmorangie.
But you're a commoner, so you wouldn't know. I've actually been to the Glenmorangie factory or distillery.
Listen, can you
Scotland.
speak American? I don't care how they pronounce it over there. It's Glenmorangie.
Well, we're going to have a neutral party arbitrate that. I think it's Glenmorangie.
It's tomato here.
Tomato.
It's tomato over there. I don't care what they call it over there.
But
no,
yes.
my tip of the day. I'm sorry.
I started with a little Scotch and bourbon collection in the studio, and actually, the more I work with you, the more I'm going to need Scotch and bourbon to continue.
That hurts, but I also think you're starting the day off maybe with a little hit off the bottle.
You never know.
All right, here's my tip of the day. Folks, please learn how to drive in the snow.
Oh, yeah.
We had an unexpected blizzard last Thursday. The nitwit meteorologist said, we're going to get a dusting. We're going to get maybe a half an inch of snow flurries. Well, I was in New Jersey, just 35 miles away, and because nobody was prepared, no salt, no plows, every idiot in the world that panics in the snow. It took me 2.5 hours to get 35 miles home. Folks, learn how to drive in the snow. Here's 3 quick tips. First of all, put it in low. Get it out of drive. Everybody is a low gear, which means the axle spins slower to grab the snow. Even if your car isn't meant for the snow, when you're hitting a hill, okay, hit the gas. You need momentum. I can't imagine how many people I saw slow down or hit the brakes. Yeah. Now you're doomed.
Yeah, you don't stop on a hill. Never.
You don't stop on the hill. And then number 3, you may even have to hit a little momentum with pedal to the metal on a turn. Don't be afraid you're going to spin into a 360. Take the steering wheel the opposite direction once you start the turn. So, folks, low gear.
Safe following distance is another good one.
Safe
because
following
people
distance.
always underestimate how quick they can stop in the snow.
But when you panic, you cause 35 miles to take 2.5 hours.
That's a good tip because it's sorely needed. And, of course, my father was a driver ed instructor, so I got this tutorial from the time I could understand what he was doing as he was driving. So folks, we have a great show today, and actually a different show. We kind of teased this last week. And oftentimes we look at what's wrong and the status quo and how we can do better in society. But today we're going to talk about thankfulness. First, we're going to do the Idiot of the Week Awards, and I got some nominees for Rich. Then the thankfulness piece. And then we're going to conclude, and yes, you've been clamoring for it, listeners, for many, many months now. We haven't done this. The Kroller Wiki is back. And we're going to do a winter-themed edition of the Kroller Wiki, so be prepared.
I am thankful that we're doing the Kroller Wiki again, and I'm thankful that we have the Idiots of the Week segment, and I'm thankful that I have you as my co-host.
Wait, save that for later in the segment.
I'm sorry, I got jumped in too early.
All right, so Idiot of the Week, and I have some nominees for you today, Richie. Okay, Rich, we're both very mediocre athletes.
I was pretty good overall.
Yeah, you're very mediocre. I was a little bit less mediocre than you. But anyhow, don't you hate it when athletes have excuses?
Hate it.
Is that one of the worst things in
One
the
of the
world?
worst.
Well, blaming your opponent is one thing, but blaming your opponent for farting is definitely a unique excuse.
I got to hear this one.
But that's exactly what happened at the Grand Slam of Darts in Wolverhampton, England, obviously. Both Gary Anderson and Wesley Harms denying responsibility for the, quote, rotten egg smells. Two-time champion Anderson, 47, won Thursday's match 10-2 to progress to the quarterfinals, but Dutchman Harms was quick to explain his substandard performance by accusing the Scottish opponent of leaving a fragrant smell. He told Dutch TV, "It'll take me 2 nights to lose this smell from my nose." World number 4 Anderson was not pleased by the accusation and saying the smell had definitely come from Harms. Quote, "If the boy thinks I've farted, he's 1,010% wrong." By the way, I've never heard that percentage
That's
used.
taking it to a new level.
Those Scots, they're interesting people. "I swear on my children's lives that it was not my fault. I had a bad stomach once on stage before, and I admitted it. So I'm not going to lie about farting on stage." Harms retorted, "Every time I walked past there was a waft of rotten eggs." That's why I think it was him. It was bad. It was a stink. Then he started to play better, and I thought he must have needed to get some of the wind out. If someone had done that, they need to see a doctor. So that's nominee number 1. Any comments on blaming your opponent?
I'm wondering if he didn't do it on purpose and sneak a skunk underneath his kilt. Because I'll tell you, a bad smell to that level can throw anybody off.
Rotten eggs. All right, the second nominee. A Baltimore, Maryland man who interrupted a performance of Fiddler on the Roof to yell, quote, "Heil Hitler, Heil Trump," has said he now is, quote, "so embarrassed and ashamed and disgusted with his own actions." Anthony Derlunis, 58, apologized profusely in an interview on his front porch with the local NBC affiliate. This just happened. I actually saw it on the news. He explained that he was frustrated with President Donald Trump and that his shout was intended to compare Trump to Adolf Hitler. A scene in the musical, the wedding scene interrupted by the Tsarist Russian police, had reminded him of Trump. Quote, "He plays into our fears of the people, and it just came out wrong," said the audibly upset Derlunis. He wouldn't let the news station show his face. Of course, the outburst was interpreted by those in the theater as anti-Semitic and caused a bit of a panic, where some witnesses feared Derlunis was armed. His shouts came less than 3 weeks after a gunman had opened fire at a Pittsburgh synagogue, killing 11. "I'll be honest, I was waiting to hear a gunshot," audience member Rick Scher said. "I thought, here we go." Although the show continued, some patrons were too disturbed to stay and filed out of the theater. "I just want to let everyone know how sincerely sorry I am," Derlunis said. "I opened my mouth and it was wrong, and I know that now. In the moment, it was just my frustration. I don't know what I was thinking. I'm so ashamed. My heart goes out to all those that I ruined their night, to everybody that was affected by my stupidity." Finally, Derlunis told the interview that he rarely drinks, but had consumed several alcoholic beverages before his outburst.
So surprised.
He's been banned from the theater for life.
He should be banned from Maryland for life. I mean, first of all, anyone that has half a brain knows Fiddler on the Roof is based on a Jewish family, right? And especially during these crazy times with shootings in theaters and concerts and schools, if I saw a guy stand up and go, "Heil Hitler," I'd think, okay, here's a Nazi sympathizer, and he's going to start going crazy. I don't care if you have the worst case of Tourette's. Why would you pick Fiddler on the Roof to tie this all together? Let me tell you something. I think he drank a whole bottle of that Glenmorangie before
Not Glenmorangie.
but not Glenmorangie before this theater event. Is there a higher level above idiot? Is there moron of the week? Despicable idiot of the week? I mean, that is so. Hey, look, the guy farting. you're farting. We can't prove, was he really doing it? Was the other guy doing it? Was somebody who, that's fun.
But it is entertaining to our listeners.
It's super entertaining, and I loved it. But Derlunis, by a landslide, wins Idiot of the Week for. There's probably children and parents saying, "Oh, I want to take you to Fiddler on the Roof for the first time ever." It's one of the classics of all time. Great music, great story, great life lessons. And this clearly
Clearly the winner.
clear the winner. I will send $1.50 to any of the families that were impacted negatively by Mr. Derlunis.
Yeah, and let's be honest. I mean, Trump is a lightning rod for a lot of things. I disagree with majority of the things he does, and I do like some of the things that he does. But in no possible way could any sane person compare him to Adolf Hitler. I mean, and the people that do have zero credibility. So let it be written, so let it be done. Wasn't that another Yul Brynner? Wasn't Yul Brynner in Fiddler on the Roof? Or am I misremembering that?
Yul Brynner.
I think
was
I
in
think
The
I
King and I.
The King and I. That's what I'm thinking. Sorry.
Oh my gosh,
I'm not very cultured when it comes.
You are
to
confusing the audience today before we even get started.
All right, so we're going to move on. And as I mentioned to the audience, this is a little bit of a unique show. It's going to be dripping with positivity.
Dripping.
Don't you like that?
I like it.
Dripping with positivity today because, we do spend a lot of time on this show pointing out many things that could be better in our society, and we're doing it constructively. But on today's show, as we approach Thanksgiving here in the United States, we have to focus, and I think it does require some focus on all the good things in this world. And let's start, Richie, at a very high level. We'll start at the world level, and then we'll come down to the United States level, and then we'll conclude this segment with you and I saying some things that we're thankful for. So let's start first. It's painfully obvious that if you look at the data, we are in a lot better shape than our ancestors. So just to give you some idea, in 1800, 1800 is not that long ago, a couple hundred years, 85% of the world lived in what we would call extreme poverty. So that right now that's defined as $1.90 a day. So now it's less than 10%. So that's 200 years. Now, obviously, none of us were alive 200 years ago, and it seems really far away, but in the context of history, that is an extreme improvement. Scientific developments, chlorination of water. I mean, you could probably add a lot more to this because this is your ballywick. The discovery of blood groups, the measles vaccine, the eradication of smallpox have saved billions of lives. Famines, which in the past killed millions of people, pretty much no longer happen. Countries have abandoned prejudice against women and minorities and improved the treatment of children. Of course, not every country, but many countries. Violence has declined by dramatic degrees all over the world in many spheres, including genocide, war, human sacrifice, torture, slavery, and the treatment of animals. So before I go any further, and I have some theories on why this is. You won't be surprised to know that it has something to do with economics.
Oh, my God.
But comments on, in the big scheme of history as a world, do you agree that we're doing much, much better than our ancestors?
I do, but I think it's relative, right? I mean, if we compare to eras gone by that didn't have electricity and running water, we just assume, they had it tough. But think about this thought. At any point in history, that moment has it better than their ancestors.
For sure.
So even in 1800, although compared to today, 85% were in extreme poverty and times were tough, they were a heck of a lot better than they were in 1400.
Correct.
Or Jesus's time. So I don't know that it's recognized by the folks in the moment. So I'm sure there was families in the 1800s saying, Daddy, why do I have to go out to the outhouse? It's cold out. And how come we didn't have anything to eat today? And how come we all have to sleep like Eskimos because it's so cold? And the father would say,
Junior?
Junior, you're absolutely right. But do you know your great-great-grandfather didn't even have a roof over his head?
Had to walk through snow uphill.
He had to walk through snow up to his knees. And when he went to the bathroom, unfortunately, one day he didn't come back. A bear ate him. So
you're saying relativism makes this a moot point?
it's not moot. You are correct. Let's say we're a lot more comfortable, right? Our struggles, for the most part, are not, are we going to see tomorrow? Am I going to get eaten by a bear? Am I going to freeze to death? Am I going to starve to death? Is my poor little kid going to die of malaria or measles or the flu? Those types of things have been eradicated, as you pointed out. But relative, I don't know that anyone in the moment recognizes how bad they had until they look back on it. And maybe we're making a bigger deal of tough times than they really are.
So let's explore the psychological part of this, because you brought it up. Don't you think that there's a human propensity to outweigh the negative versus the positive? Evolutionary biology has us built for, to recognize fear for survival instincts over the rewards of positivity. Don't you think and I think our current day news cycle is like that. The news organizations are geared towards the negative because they know it gets eyeballs over positive stories. Do you think there's something to that? And we can't recognize the positive because we're more geared towards fear?
Yes, I don't think we outweigh the negative. I think we put more weight and emphasis on the negative.
Isn't that the same thing? Outweighing? And you're saying put more weight on negative? Outweighing?
I thought
okay, that's what I meant.
Positive should outweigh the negative, but
right.
But the negative, absolutely. Human nature is this. And I think about it. Sometimes laying in bed before I fall asleep, some stupid story pops into my head from 20, 30, 40 years ago, and it's usually a negative one. The tackle I missed, or the shot I missed, or...
There's a lot of those.
See, don't mislead the audience. There's very few of those. That's the point I'm trying to make. I remember
You remember that one shot you missed.
I remember the one bad moment I had versus the 3 or 4 good ones. Or...
maybe one or two good ones on the basketball court, at least. You maybe had some good ones on the football court. It was very few on the basketball court.
Why do you mislead the audience? I was the MVP of the one championship.
Because I know it can tweak you because you have this revisionist history of basketball.
All right. We'll get into that another time. Now you threw me off.
You were talking about positivity over negativity and how we weight it.
Human nature, for some reason, remembers the misses or the sale they didn't make or the deal they missed or the girl they didn't get to go out with them, or the one bad holiday they had. For some reason, negative weighs on people's memories and emotion. You remember the bad experience in the casino versus, winning the lottery. For some reason, we're geared to remembering and focusing on the misses versus the hits.
Yeah, I don't. Maybe that's an individual thing. I don't really think about the negative. I don't really think that much about the positive either. I tend to think at a macro level, so I don't really think about negative things in the past. I don't know why.
Because you're so much better than everybody.
No. I'm just maybe that's just you. You're making it sound like all humans do that. I think that's an individual thing. What people remember and how they remember.
Stop right there. You were using this as a segue into society. So, reporters, the media, blows out of proportion.
Well, that I agree with.
Negative things.
I'm just talking about the past. I don't remember, but I agree. I totally agree that humans are conditioned to have fear outweigh opportunity.
I was trying to support your segment, and then you throw me under the bus. Do you see what you do to me sometimes?
Where's that scotch?
So I was supporting your premise and where you're going with this, and then you say, "Oh, well, maybe you're that way, but I'm not." Sometimes you're such a contradiction of common sense; it's mind blowing. But here's another example.
All right.
So I was just listening to the news. Well, Donald Trump throwing the Navy SEAL team under the bus for not getting to Osama bin Laden quick enough.
Right.
Dude,
right.
What? I'm surprised we got to him at all with all the caves and covert hiding. I'm surprised we got him at all. Why would you throw under the bus one of the greatest military efforts and groups, the Navy SEALs, toughest guys in the world? Why would So
Well,
it's
because
like
he's extremely small, and he's small in about everything he does. But I will say this: the other side of that rant that he had about the Navy SEAL and everything was that we gave Pakistan billions of dollars for nothing, and I agree with him on that. That's one thing I agree with Trump. Why are we giving Pakistan, or any country for that matter, billions of dollars to be our friend, and they didn't do anything in return? So I agree with him on that. But did he slant the Navy SEALs and the military in general because of his own pettiness? Of course. That's what he does.
It's like a backhanded compliment.
Of course.
Oh, you're so pretty. I love you. Oh, but could you do your hair differently and your shoes look like crap?
He's small, very small.
Yes, he's right about Pakistan. Trump, you're 100% right about Pakistan. Why tie it in? Leave the Navy SEALs Osama bin Laden comment out of it. No need for it. So
it's the quandary of Donald Trump. He's very, very unique.
he's one example. There's the Eagles won the Super Bowl for the first time in 58 years. So actually, it was a championship game at the time when they won in 60. It wasn't a Super Bowl. But the point is, I remember, gosh, why'd they make it so close? It didn't have to be that.
The defense played horrible. The defense played horrible. They gave up all those points.
Horrible. I questioned some of the call. We won the Super Bowl. Like, people, for some reason, it's the Eeyore complex. Woe is me. I almost got hit by a car. Well, you weren't looking. It's a sunny day out. Your kids are healthy. You got money in the bank. Focus on the positive, people.
Okay, so I have a theory on why and if you look at a chart in human history of gross domestic product or the living standards of humans, it's pretty much a very, very small slope until you get to about 200 or 300 years ago, when free market capitalism
are you going to bore the audience
comes
to death?
into society. And don't you know it, once trade and mutual benefit of trade and free markets and international trade and all this kind of stuff, once that comes into human what's the word I'm looking for? Into the lexicon of human existence, living standards have greatly increased. And so that's a wonderful thing. When you trade with other people, it's mutually beneficial, and our President Donald Trump should understand this, that trade is not someone ripping someone off. It's not one wins, one loses. Because trade is voluntary, everyone wins because you give up a certain portion and you think it's worth to get whatever you're getting in return. It's voluntary. You're not getting ripped off on trade. And with mutual benefit, the whole world has grown over the last 200 to 300 years.
Do you see how you slipped? I've seen
What
the
did I
pattern
do?
here.
What did I do?
You slip political agendas and libertarian beliefs covertly in these digressions into our themes almost every week. You're getting really good at it, but I'm picking up on it.
It's well entwined with the way we live and how we survive. Economics is a pivotal part of life.
So explain to me where you're going with this as far as why it creates negative attitude versus positive.
Well, because if we're talking about the advancement of the whole world and living standards and being thankful for what we have, it's primarily attributed to how we interact with as people, and the specialization of comparative advantage and specialization of both jobs and natural resources and countries. All that plays into international trade, and when you trade with someone, you both benefit. So that's going to continue, and I believe that human societies will continue to thrive if they stay down that path and not go to protectionism, which is where we're heading. So,
okay, I got you back on the rails. Thanks for your clarification.
The bottom line is the historically unprecedented combination of prosperity, freedom, peace, stability that we are currently experiencing suggests that we live in the best time ever. That is I wanted to use that as my closing statement of this segment. Don't you agree with that?
Yes, by the way, I did like your use of the word lexicon. So you're hitting on the next area of problem, greed, right? The more we have, the more we want.
Is this your Michael Douglas speech from Wall Street? Greed
you know what?
Is good.
Greed is good, but it's really not, right? People are just never happy. And I think it's human nature, right? We're susceptible to addictions. We're just the way we're programmed, the way our DNA has been set up since, we were primates 10,000 years ago. The need for food, the need for water, the need for sex, the need for money, the need for shelter, all these needs.
Maslow's hierarchy.
Yes. They drive us, but, they can drive us into problems. And I think now that, at least our audience, our segment we typically are talking about, and us as well, you have a nice car and you want the next nicer car. And then maybe you want the Lexus or the Audi or the Mercedes, and you have a nice house, townhome, condo, and then you want the single home. Then you want the mansion. Then you want the vacation home.
Right.
And it's just normal, you used to drink crappy scotch. Your taste was horrible. It was scotch and bourbon. Right now, all of a sudden, I see 18 and 21-year-old scotches up there.
I like the 12 to 15
Yeah,
range.
but they're not. Pretty soon, they won't be good enough.
I'm a Havertown guy. I'm very mediocre.
You don't act like Havertown guy. You live in Bryn Mawr. So as we go up the scale and as we get older and we have nicer shoes and clothes and hats and cars and scotches, it's like, when is it enough? And I think
it's an arms race. I agree with you. The norm becomes, not good enough. And humans adjust very quickly to their norms, and then they set higher goals. And I think, when you go out and look at a house, it's always the house. You ever notice it's always the house that you want is always the one just a little bit out of your range.
Of course.
Or the car, or whatever. I think that's true among all of us. I don't know. So do you think we in the United States, Rich, let's move it to our country and just list a few things before we go on to the personal things. What things are we missing as United States citizens that we should be thankful for?
Oh, we kind of talked about this a few episodes ago about who has the best government, and who's the best country in the world. And the U.S. used to be number one, and now we're kind of, depending on the survey or how you measure that, where top 3, top 5, top 10, worst case top 15. But I think because we're skewed now, if you live in a inner city ghetto or slum, or you have a tough situation, broken home, lost your job, physically, financially, okay, you have it just as tough as anybody else in the world. But for the most part, lower middle class, upper middle class, upper class, I think we missed the fact that we have it better than whatever the statistic was, 95% of the rest of the world, 98, 99% of the rest of the world. The fact that we can pretty much within a mile or a couple of miles hit a good hospital, or within a couple of blocks hit a good restaurant, have access to entertainment, and we've kind of taken it all for granted. So I think
totally
we really, although we have a lot of problems with our bipolar, which might be accurate, our bipartisan government, and a lot of things you hate about the government, which are accurate. We still have it better than 90, 95, 99% of the rest of the world, and we overlook a lot of that, and we want better and better, which isn't wrong to want better, but we have it pretty good already.
We really do, and if you want some resources, listeners, there's a guy by the name of Steven Pinker. And he had a book last year called Enlightenment Now. And a lot of these findings are in there. I would encourage you to go look at it. It's really a positive book, and it helps you. You have to go out and look for positive news, and you really should read that book. There's a website called humanprogress.org, which is also another good one. You can go out and find a lot of this good news, because the news stations are not going to give it to you. But just to chime into what you said, Rich. So yes, the system of government, I still believe, is far superior. It was an experiment that the founders had 273 years ago, and it worked by and large. It still has lots of problems, but it's by far the best system of government. Now, our leaders, we can talk about them at a different time. Our freedoms, the freedom that we have, I really think, we talked about this on the Socialism show several shows ago, I really think the young people should do some history work on the former Soviet bloc, Mao's China, certainly North Vietnam, and North Korea now, Cuba, now Venezuela.
Gaddafi, Idi Amin.
Yeah, I
those
mean, the
governments.
dictatorships in Africa. I mean, to have the freedoms that we have is really, it could be right up there with love as the most important thing that we have. And it's just amazing. The entrepreneurial culture that we have in this country, I think, is by far the best in the world. And, everyone comes here to start businesses. And, some of the best things in our lives were done in this country only because the systems of government don't prop up entrepreneurs like we do in this country. I mean, think of the world without the iPhone, without Google, without, unfortunately, Facebook, without all the many discoveries that were done in the U.S. because we have an entrepreneurial culture. I mean, that's the thing that I don't think we take for granted. I mean, I think we do take for granted and don't appreciate.
You're 100% right. You're 1,010% right. I think it can sum it up as the choices we have.
Yeah.
Right?
Amazing.
We take for granted. I walk into a grocery store and, there's all this fresh fruit and fresh vegetables and fresh meats. And it's like, we take that for granted. There are many, probably 90% of the countries in the world that are lucky if they have one vegetable.
Right.
Or meat at all. Or fruit at all.
Or one choice.
Right.
Of each item.
We turn on the television. There's 1,010 channels. When we grew up, there was
Three plus UHF.
Right. And whatever was on, you had to take it as a family, or take it or leave it.
Right.
Just the choices we have and the options we have. Even let's say you're lower middle class, you still have choices.
And by the way, if you're lower class in this country, you live better than kings lived 150 years ago. I mean, with the creature comforts of life.
Totally agree.
And all of it is due to competition, Rich. Free market competition breeds the best. That's what I say.
You keep fitting these things in like a young Thomas Paine.
Oh, no.
All
right, so closing thoughts, Rich, for this segment before we go on to our personal thanks.
I just think, even if half of our lives stink and the other half is great, focus on the great. Because I'll tell you, negative thoughts, negative karma, Eeyore mentality will impact your life. I can't explain it, whether it's universal vibrations, but bad karma creates bad situations. Positive thinking leads to positive outcomes.
I totally agree with that. There used to be a saying that I heard when I was a young father, and someone told me, catch your kids doing something right. In other words, emphasize the positive over the correcting, which I can't always say I was perfect at that, but it's a good thing to do, is to look for the positive. And unfortunately, in our news cycle today, in our society today, you do have to look for the positive. So go check out Steven Pinker, Enlightenment Now. Check out Human Progress. Look for good news and be thankful. All right, Richie, so you want to go first? You have some things you are thankful for that you want to share with your listeners, since that's what this show's about?
Do you want to go back and forth or kind of knock them all out?
I had a list I was going to go, but you want to go first or I can go first?
I'll go first.
Okay.
And I don't know that I'm going to rattle them all off. We can go back and forth. But I'm thankful for being born in this part of the country, in this part of the world, and just not realizing, I had great parents that afforded me the opportunity to be successful with the right morals and the right ethics. And I didn't even realize it until, you become an adult. Like, wow, I could have been born in Bosnia or Ethiopia or Siberia. What a blessing to be born.
Ovarian lottery. You won the ovarian lottery.
Or the lucky sperm club, we can call it. But yeah, I'm very lucky just in general, right? And then, wow, what an amazing, lucky guy I am to have a daughter, a healthy daughter. She's smart, she's funny, she's athletic. She's obedient. I am just so fortunate to have an amazing daughter, and I wouldn't have that daughter if it wasn't for my amazing wife. Hey, look, we're all men and women in which testosterone and estrogen often combat each other with different emotions and ways we think and belief systems, but
marriage is easy, Rich. Marriage is simple. Come on, what are you talking about?
Yeah, let's ask our wives that. But I am very, very thankful and grateful. What a great wife I have, Jill. She's a great person. She has great morals and ethics. She's a great mom. She's a great person. She's a hard worker.
Extremely patient, putting up with you.
Extremely patient. She's beautiful. I mean, she's, I don't want to say how old she is, but she still looks better than people 20 years younger than her, and she works at it, and she's a great cook. And so, then I'm grateful for her parents, right? She comes from two great parents, my in-laws, Carol and John, great salt-of-the-earth people, give their shirt off their back for everybody, and they probably spend 20 of their 24 hours helping the world. So, and I'm also thankful for my sisters and my family and my extended family. But that kind of, I would say, concentrated area where I was born, who my parents were, who my family and my extended family is, and then I'll leave it. I'm not done with, but friends. I have some of the greatest friends in the world that would also give their shirt off their back. I have 100 people I could
I
call.
might give you a sweatband. I don't know about a shirt.
You would give me, well, your shirt wouldn't fit because you're so slight. I'm kind of a big muscular guy. But I could call 100 people at 2 a.m., and I'll bet you half of them would pick me up on the side of the road if my car broke down. I'm thankful.
Of course, my phone would be off. So at 2
Well,
a.m.
you're not one of the 100 then I would call. But, hey, Mark, you're an example of a great friend. We've known each other since 7th grade, and here we are, 273 years later, and we're still tight. So, and you've helped me, learn about what my weaknesses are and all sorts of things you've helped me with through the years. So I'm thankful for that. So there you go.
Good.
There's
And not
my
an
list.
exhaustive list, but of course, that was a great top tier list. I took a little different approach. I'm going to do more of remember that Billy Joel song, "We Didn't Start the Fire"? It's kind of like just a rant.
Sure, no, well.
So I'm gonna go through it really quickly, and then you can interject. So again, this is not an exhaustive list, but I'll just rip through them. My faith, the emotion of love, my wife, my children, the relatively good health of my immediate family, the uniqueness of each of my children, my parents, my siblings, cancer treatments that have kept my sister and my dad alive, mental health treatments, my close friends, freedom and individual liberty, the U.S. system of government, we just talked about that, the Constitution and Declaration of Independence, the talents and gifts that I was born with, my job and specifically its flexibility, my wife's cooking, you got to admit, that's a good one.
Always smells good around here.
Classic rock, Led Zeppelin, the Beatles, and the Eagles, probably my top three. Cars, airplanes, tractors, motorcycles, ATVs, lawnmowers, leaf blowers, snow blowers, and just generally anything that has a gasoline motor in it that does something cool. The internet. The internet's amazing.
What are you,
It's
from Alabama?
Changed our lives. Podcasts, and specifically this podcast and you, Richie. Power Beats headphones. I love them. I walk all the time. I use my Power Beats headphones. Economics and political economy. Classic liberalism and libertarianism. Dark roast coffee. No cream, no sugar.
Ouch.
Pika's Pizza. Utz Pretzels. Great bread. A good scotch or bourbon. Heat and air conditioning. Warm clothes. Streaming content on HBO, Netflix, and Amazon. Being able to play golf all over the world. Being able to travel all over the world. College basketball, pro football, 60 Minutes, and anything bloopers on TV. The change of seasons in the Philadelphia area. Mature trees. The diversity of people and geography in the world. Old family pictures and videos. Poetry. The listeners don't know, I happen to have an affinity for poetry. I've written some very amateurish poems.
Very amateurish.
Including one for Rich when he was 50.
That was a good one.
Only 5 holidays: Christmas, Thanksgiving, Easter, Memorial Day, and Independence Day. That's all that matter. The rest you can get rid of.
Arbor Day?
A loyal, affectionate, and playful dog. And I actually wish I had that right now. And probably a great one to end on, the capacity to have hope for the future. And I do have hope for the future, even though I'm kind of a little bit cranky sometimes. I do have hope for the future, and I think more than anything on Thanksgiving, I'm hopeful about the future. And I think that, having kids, and maybe I'll have grandkids someday, I'm hopeful that the world will be better for them in the future. But we got a lot of work to do. So that was a kind of a quick list, but anything that stand out that surprised you of that? Because you've known me for 40 years.
Tractors threw me off a little bit.
Oh, I love it. I love a good tractor. I wish I had one.
No, it was a great list. You were thinking, a lot more holistically and comprehensively than I was. So yeah, I mean, I love a good Kit Kat, right? I mean, I love a good IPA.
Although I'm a dark chocolate guy, so I would say there are dark chocolate Kit Kats, by the way.
I love a family beach day when it's sunny out, but you have a tent to cover you, and taking my daughter into the ocean and having a couple cocktails and telling stories and playing music on. Yeah, so there's a ton of stuff that you reminded me of, so I appreciate your list. The one that stood out for me, and hey, whether you're Christian, agnostic, Jewish, atheist, hey, I respect whatever you believe in, but I'm a Christian as you are. So yes, we have none of this to be thankful for, if it's not for God. So I guess I got to be most thankful for my faith and the relationship I believe I've established over time with the Lord, and with your help, Mark, guiding me over the years, when I was not quite that way. So there's so much to give thankful for if you just stop and smell the roses, and don't worry. I love the saying, "Don't cry for what you've lost, be happy for what you've had."
Yeah, I agree. And truthfully, I spent half an hour just just thinking about the things in my life that I'm happy for. And it took me to proactively to do that, to write all that stuff down. And I probably wouldn't have thought of many of those if I wasn't proactively doing that. So the message of today is go out, be proactive, and actually try to think about the things that are a blessing to you and that you're thankful for. And maybe say thanks to the people that are part of that list. So, all right, let's move on. We've got Crawler Wiki, Richie, and I've been looking forward to doing this. So the first one, and for the listeners who haven't listened to our prior shows, basically I'm going to give Rich a saying that we all know, and he's going to tell me the origin of that saying. So the first one is, snug as a bug in a rug.
Wow, snug as a bug in a rug. I mean, how many parents have said that to their kids as they tuck them in at night? I can tell you where this came from. So most people don't realize that rugs really didn't come into existence until the late 1700s because most floors were dirt, and any type of garment that was taken from animals, whether it's wool or whatever, was used for clothing, which was much more important. In the late 1700s, though, people finally realized, okay, we got to put something on the floor here, these hard floors. So the first rugs were made out of wool, and these first rugs were very thick, very plush. And, pre-modern construction, there was a lot of ways for insects to get into homes. There still is, but there was even more crevices, cracks, leaky roofs, whatever. And invariably, these bugs would try to hibernate in the winter, and they'd find their way into these plush rugs, and they'd lay their larvae and cocoons. And hence, over the course of a winter, these bugs became very snug as a bug in a rug.
Wow. I mean, you're usually pretty good at this, but that was amazingly accurate. You sure you didn't look it up yourself? This expression is presumed to allude to a clothed moth cocoon happily ensconced in a cozy rug. The phrase appears to be an anonymous work in 1769, so you even had like the general time frame.
I told you I'm good at this.
But it's usually attributed to Benjamin Franklin, who wrote a letter to Georgiana Shipley in 1772, commiserating her on the death of her pet squirrel named Scug, saying, quote, "Here Scug lies snug as a bug in a rug." So Ben Franklin, founder of University of Pennsylvania, by the way, my alma mater. And we can attribute that to Ben Franklin in the 1700s. You get a point on that one, Rich. You were very, very close.
Thank you. How did you get in the University of Penn again?
Back door. It was open and I snuck in. All right. Dyed in the wool is the second one. Dyed in the wool. You don't hear that a whole lot, but dyed in the wool.
No, but of course I know this too. I think I'm going to be on a roll today. So,
and you have a lot of dyed in the wool Trump fans as friends, right?
Absolutely. And wool, this is a good segue from the previous, wool that was used for rugs. But let's remember, folks, pre-1700s, I think it was more medieval, Middle Ages, wool was a high-end commodity. Right, only farmers that raised sheep, only the elite royal kings and queens would have access to wool garments. So, unfortunately, the poor they were the ones that were cold in the winter. And, especially the impoverished, what they would do during these cold winters, they would sneak into these farms where the sheep were being herded, or they'd sneak through a castle wall where these sheep were being herded. And to stay warm, they would snuggle in between the sheep that were sleeping. Sometimes these sheep, unfortunately, would move around and these folks would freeze to death. Or some of these bigger, fatter sheep would fall on someone's face and smother them to death. And then the next day in the town hall or buying their one vegetable, somebody would say, Martha, did you hear about old Hagar last night? He died in the wool.
So I appreciate the creativity. Unfortunately, you're using the wrong died. It's not D-I-E-D. It's D-Y-E-D.
Oh.
Died as in died.
Oh, it is?
As in dyed, as in changed color. So actually, the expression comes from the fact that fabric can be dyed, D-Y-E-D, in a number of ways. The woven fabric may be dyed after it's complete, or the threads may be dyed before they are woven. When a color is, quote, dyed in the wool itself is dyed before being spun into threads. So the color will be least likely to fade or change. So
D-Y-E-D.
D-Y-E-D.
Got it.
So that's why they say dyed in the wool means that they're not likely to change. All right, last one. What the dickens? Did our old Coach Younger used to say what the dickens? That's why I brought it up. So where'd that saying come from? What the dickens?
What the dickens, Mark? Why didn't you pass the ball? He was wide open.
Because I had a shot. I didn't want to pass it to Rich where he'd miss it.
I had a higher shooting percentage than you did.
All right, what the dickens?
What the dickens? Actually, you're closing the segment on an easy one. So, as many of us know, Charles Dickens is one of the most famous Victorian age novelists ever to live. Some would argue the best novelist of all time. He wrote Oliver Twist, A Christmas Carol, David Copperfield, A Tale of Two Cities, and many others. But Dickens would publish these novels on a weekly or monthly basis to create.
What a prolific writer every month.
He was unbelievable. He would do like a chapter installment.
Okay, gotcha.
And he would create extreme anticipation and suspense. And again, people would gather and in local pubs or at the market, and they'd say, hey, what's the next installment from Dickens? And eventually that was shortened to What the Dickens.
So that I got it. So actually, the phrase has nothing to do with Charles Dickens. It's surprising. I would have thought it would too.
How can it not?
Dickens is a euphemism, specifically a minced oath. I don't know what that means for the word devil. So Shakespeare evidently used it in Merry Wives of Windsor in 1600, and the quote was, "I cannot tell what the dickens his name is my husband had of him." They talked differently back then.
Is that a lexicon?
But Dickens is a euphemism for devil, which maybe I shouldn't have brought that up for the Christmas season or as we approach the Christmas season. But yeah, Dickens is a euphemism for devil. That's it.
Euphemism or lexicon?
Euphemism.
Got it. Wow. So
all right,
I started off strong and ended up miserably incorrect.
Flame out. All right, but remember, we're emphasizing the positive today. So you had a point there. You started off very strong. So we're very thankful for that start.
Let's remember the hit, not the misses.
All right, Richie, any closing comments before we close the show?
No, I think we should more often kind of take an itinerary on our lives and just, wait a minute, I have it pretty good. And remember, we have a lot more good things than bad. It was a great lesson in life from our favorite economist, Mark Payne Weaver.
And by the way, folks, just because Thanksgiving is a day for giving thanks doesn't mean you can't do it the rest of the year. I mean, you could give thanks every day of the year. I've actually heard of people that when they lay down at bed at night, they recite 4 or 5 or 6 things or 10 things, however many you want, of things that they're thankful for that day. So that's something, or you could do it in the morning if you have a morning quiet time or whatever. Say things you're thankful for. So go out of your way to accentuate the positive and be thankful. Okay, folks, make sure you tune in next episode we're going to close the year out, one more episode this year, for our 2018 year in review. And we'll take a look back at the major events in our society, plus revisit some of our favorite times and our episodes that we had during the year. It's been a great year in a lot of ways, and it should be a lot of fun. So, as always, please remember, if what you see or hear sounds idiotic, then we're just the guys to help you sort it out. See y'all next episode. Take care.
Thank you for listening to the Are We Idiots Show. Please subscribe on iTunes, Google Play, or Stitcher so you can enjoy all episodes.
True love won't say goodbye. True love won't say goodbye. True love.